Thanks so much, Allison. And once again, thanks for joining here today. So to kick off our discussion today, we are going to share a little bit more about what this task force is trying to do and what brings us here today. And both Jennifer and I will do that, and then we'll also provide an opportunity for our other executive committee members to share any thoughts they have to kick off the day here. Our executive committee is really meant to bring tribal, federal, local, state entities together to guide the work of the task force. This task force is really about getting our arms around the catastrophic wildfire threat in California and being more proactive around building our resilience and adjusting to that threat. So very excited to have Supervisor Zach Friend from Santa Cruz here today on behalf of the California State Association of Counties. Counties are such critical partners in this work. We have Chief Joe Tyler, who is the director of CAL FIRE, leading our efforts at the state. We have Don Hankins, who leads our Tribal Indigenous Network, or Indigenous Stewardship Network, and is a professor at Chico State. And Don has been a critical part of our executive committee. We have Sam Asefa. Sam, give a wave. Sam works with the governor, leading our governor's Office of Planning and Research, which is really focused. It's really our state's planning arm and critically important for wildfire. And then Richard Barheit, who leads our Pacific Southwest Research Station, which is really the research arm of the U.S. Forest Service. And then, of course, Patrick Wright. Patrick, Kristen, Forrest are driving incredible progress on the task force, and we're really thankful for their work. So if you don't know Patrick, Kristen, or Forrest, or any of those folks that actually work on the task force, please introduce yourselves today. So this task force, as I said, is all about bringing everyone together to build our resilience to what we know is a catastrophic wildfire threat in California. Fully 7% of our state's landmass has burned in the last few years. And we know we will be challenged with this in years and decades to come. Part of this is, frankly, a legacy of landscape management in which over a century we've allowed conditions to get more dangerous in our forests and our landscapes that enable the natural ecological wildfire cycle to turn into these big, hot, catastrophic wildfires. We also know that climate's changing and conditions are riper and riper for these huge, devastating fires. We know that these fires not only impact public safety, if you live in the wildland-urban interface, they also impact public health. Virtually all of California has been impacted by toxic smoke in the last few years, and they have major negative impacts on our environment and the landscape. So this task force that Governor Newsom initiated is all about bringing everybody together to get much more proactive than we have been in the past to protect ourselves from this growing threat. And I have to say, tremendous progress has been made. The governor, our legislature, has invested almost $3 billion of funding into wildfire resilience work in the last few years. Thanks to President Biden and his administration through the U.S. Forest Service, they've reformed the way that they fund proactive wildfire resilience work, and more funding is flowing into California through the federal government than in a generation. And as I speak today, 1,200 wildfire resilience projects are on the ground across California, including in the Central Coast. So a lot of great progress, but we know so much more work is needed. So this task force is focused on implementing an action plan called the Wildfire and Forest Resilience Action Plan, specific outcome-based action plan across reforestation, prescribed fire, private lands, public lands, essentially our roadmap to adjusting to these new conditions and bringing the wildfire crisis into control. And so this is very much a working task force. And if you visit the task force site, you can actually see in real time how we're doing on each of those actions. We need to be held accountable for implementing that action plan. But this task force is all about learning and listening as well. One thing I've learned in my role is that wildfire threats are very different depending on where you are in California. The threat in the Sierra Nevada is very different than the threat in the North Coast. Wildfire threats in Southern California are different than the Central Coast. And we need to recognize that diversity. It can't be a one-size-fits-all solution from Sacramento or Washington, D.C. So we decided early on that every other task force meeting would actually take place in a different part of California. And so we started our regional discussions in Sonoma last year with a focus on wine country and the North Coast. And then we moved to Yuba County with a focus on the Sierra Nevada. A few months ago, we were in Los Angeles County, outside of Calabasas, to really understand the threats and opportunities in Southern California. And today we're in Santa Cruz to dig into how are things going on the Central Coast. What are the unique needs here and what are the opportunities? So that's what today is all about. It's about a deeper dive into this region. Again, both the opportunities and challenges. And if we've had a successful day, a lot of folks that are tuning in or here today that don't understand this region and what's happening, including myself, are going to understand it a lot better. And then we'll be able to really identify a go-forward strategy around how to empower efforts of regional leaders, regional groups to drive wildfire resilience. Because at the end of the day, that is our core focus, is supporting regional capacity building. So you all, if you're a local leader or a regional leader or a group, are driving efforts to build wildfire resilience around your communities in your region. And then the state and federal government are supporting those efforts. So that's really what, from my view, our effort is, both writ large on the task force and here today. Let me turn it to Jennifer, again, our regional forester in Region 5 of the U.S. Forest Service, our co-chair, to share thoughts that you have.
Yeah, thanks so much. Hi, everybody. Again, Jennifer Eberlein. I'm the Regional Forester for the Pacific Southwest region, which is California, Hawaii, and the U.S.-affiliated Pacific Islands, and very happy to be here. And Wade, that was such a great recap of just all the work that we've been doing over the past several years, particularly in these meetings that we do quarterly in person. I just want to let you guys know, too, is we meet every other month outside of these quarterly meetings to have constant updates of where we're at and what we're doing. So if you're not able to come to a next quarterly meeting in person, please tap into us. I think our next one is probably next month, and we keep doing updates. I'll share from March. We heard about what scientists are doing on fuel treatments at the right scale. We heard about how the public, what are some ways that the public can start protecting their homes in light of wildfire. We got updates on where we're sharing data and how we are accountable and accounting for our work collectively across all of the jurisdictions and the areas and the arenas that we work in. And we heard a lot about wood utilization, which is always a challenge for us, is what do we do with all of this built up wood and fuels that we have on the landscape. So very happy that we're able to have constant check-ins together to keep us on task and accountable, such as Wade was saying, as we want to make sure that this task force continues to deliver those on-the-ground actions and efforts. Because as you all know, this is collective efforts. Not one entity can do this by themselves. And I'm so happy that we get this time together in person and online to do that networking, that you all are in the room together and online to be able to learn about, oh, this group is doing this. I bet I can partner with them. I need to learn more about what this activity is about because it's so similar to what I'm doing. So I'm happy that we're able to have these networking opportunities and learn more from each other. Because again, it is all about how we can do our collective collaborative efforts to really make those gains on the ground. I just want to give you a quick update on the Los Padres National Forest, which is in the Central Coast, and that's the national forest that's affiliated here as well. As you can imagine, there's lots of work on storm damage. So that's one of the big things right now that the Los Padres National Forest employees are really trying to work with their partners, communities, other jurisdictions to really look at what we can do to prioritize the repairs that need to be happening. And certainly one of the big issues is what we're planning for in terms of suppression access. We are definitely making sure residents get to their homes or their businesses, but how do you prioritize to make sure we have access, not only for visitor, for recreation economy, but for suppression activities as well. So that's happening also. I know the Los Padres is really trying to scale up their efforts. Like Wade had said, we are really trying to focus with this task force and with the Forest Service, putting large amounts of money to bigger landscapes to really affect change and bring that landscape up to a resilience that can withstand damage, whether it's by fire or flood even. But how do we get that resiliency, removing the fuels that have been built up and really focusing all of our attention and our funds on certain places. And the Los Padres in Southern California is part of that. So they're working on major fuel break work. They're looking at how we're managing campgrounds and campfires that oftentimes start fires during the high intense season. Certainly the flood damage as well is part of it. And then I just want to share too, to give you all a little ticklers of some of the upcoming funding opportunities. Since our last meeting, Secretary Vilsack announced $29 million for wood products infrastructure assistance grants, and California got 14 of those for $9 million. That's going to help establish 10 new facilities and expand or restart 4 existing facilities to help process wood byproducts. So that's great news for the state of California. California also got $43 million from the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, for the Urban and Community Forestry Grant Program that CAL FIRE helps operate. We assist disadvantaged communities in establishing and maintaining that healthy urban canopy, which is so important, not only in rural America, but in urban America as well. So I want to give you a heads up. There's a notice for funding opportunity for up to $1 billion. That BBB, that's billion. On that. I always have to look at that too. $1 billion that's released for proposals, and they're due June 1st. And then finally, heads up, the next round of community wildfire defense grants will be open later this summer. And all those communities have the opportunity to apply for that. So as Wade had said, we are all trying to work and look at where our funding opportunities and streams are, and how do we capitalize? How do we work together? How do we focus our efforts to get the best, using the trite word, bang for the buck, and get that work done so we have resilient landscapes in the future. So thanks, Wade. Turn it back.
Jen, thanks so much. There is so much money actually flowing into California and the American West to address wildfire resilience. If you want to learn more about these different pots of funding, go to the Wildfire Task Force website. Our goal is to decode all of these opportunities if you're a local or regional group, so you can actually use this money. I want to turn to any of our executive committee members for any high-level thoughts or announcements. Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And first, I just want to welcome everybody to Santa Cruz County. Santa Cruz County is really a microcosm of the ill effects of climate change, from extreme droughts and fires to extreme flooding in less than 2 years. We've experienced some of the worst climate-related disasters here in our community that we've seen within our history. And one of the things that I think is important for the working group and those that are attending today to recognize is the interrelationship between these climate disasters. The fires that we saw here, the devastating fires in 2020, we're able to trace those dead trees and those fallen trees to the same trees that destroyed the wharves here in Santa Cruz County just a couple years later in the storms. So there's an interrelationship between these things. I also want to welcome, I have 2 of my colleagues, Supervisor Smallcomb and Supervisor Pyska, from different counties here in the state that are working very hard to reignite the Tree Mortality Working Group, which I think is a very important and needed voice within this thing. I'd also like to welcome Supervisor Hernandez from Santa Cruz County as well. And he was one of the ones in the Pajaro River failure that really experienced some of these failures. So it means a lot to have you here within our community, because we really believe that we're ground zero for a lot of these changes, and we're here to stand as partners with all of you to help address them. Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary.
Supervisor, thank you. And special note, Senator John Laird will join us at the end of the day to help close out the meeting, and he's obviously a really important ally to you all as local elected officials to make sure this region gets the support it needs.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Tyler. I'm the Director and Fire Chief at CAL FIRE. Thank you for allowing us to have this committee meeting here in Santa Cruz County. Santa Cruz County that has been devastated by precipitation and storm surge, as well as the 2017 CZU lightning complex and the recoveries that are coming from that. I want to take a moment and thank the CAL FIRE representatives in the San Mateo Santa Cruz unit, Santa Clara, San Medina, Monterey, a large contingent here helping the task force prepare for all the attendees today. So thank you for taking care of that as well. You know, last week I just came off the Wildfire Preparedness Week, where we did efforts in Chino, in Santa Barbara, in Atwater, in Pine Grove, and then finally in Redding. And while the weather was cloudy and it was drizzly in May, the beginning of May for Wildfire Preparedness Week, it was really an opportunity to talk about 2022 and what's to come in 2023. In 2022, 85% reduction in the number of acres burned, 75% reduction in the number of houses damaged or destroyed. It is the work of all of you in this room and the work of the women and men of the Fire Service and CAL FIRE and the Forest Service that really got that work done. But it was a lot of the work in fire prevention, fuel breaks, and others that turned some of these large and potentially damaging fires to slow or prevent their spread into communities. But I have to give Mother Nature credit. Mother Nature provided precipitation in the middle of September. So how do we all in this room adapt to that? We adapt to that by doing more fire prevention, more fuels reduction, more prescribed fire, and taking opportunities in cultural burning. And that is what everybody did coming together during that period of time. Now, I say that from last year to this year, as we see all this historic snowpack and all this historic rain that we have received. But we have to recognize that already in 2023, we've had over 700 fires, and 51 just in this last week and 135 the week before. And while the grass seems green, you can drive across the state and see it beginning to cure, starting to change colors. And while that is going to bring a delay, perhaps in some areas of the state, to a more aggressive fire season, fire year, that grass is going to be easily ignitable with new ignitions to start fast running grass fires in wind and slope driven, eventually drying out those the brush and then drying out the timber. It is a stark reminder that the week before we started Wildfire Preparedness Week, there was a 135-acre fire in San Bernardino Mountains in the exact place that just weeks earlier there was historic snowpack. It is a stark reminder again that that just because we've had this rain, the snow, doesn't mean that we're out of the woods. But we take this opportunity to double down on those efforts to be able to do this prevention work that we need to be able to do. Just last week, CAL FIRE was able to announce $142 million in forest health grant opportunities that go towards forest health, increasing wildfire resiliency, prescribed fire efforts, 27 grants to local, regional, state, federal partners spanning 75,000 acres, 24 counties. Here in Santa Cruz, $5 million to Cal Forest to be able to assist in the planting of 115,000 new trees in the CZU Lightning Complex. That is just a start and one of many efforts. But I want to take an opportunity and acknowledge that across the state, we've had primarily 2 nurseries in the state, one in the Forest Service in Placerville, the other one, the L.A. Moran in Davis, California, that are doing their best to provide seedlings for the reforestation effort. But part of the grant opportunities just recently, 2 weeks ago, we were able to go up to Gazelle in Siskiyou County, where we found private or public-private partnership to see Sierra Pacific Industries open and groundbreak for a new nursery. Their plan is to provide 6, where L.A. Moran is able to produce right now 250,000 seedlings with a goal of 1 million. SPI by 2024 in this new nursery is planting 6 million seedlings in 24, 12 million in 25, 25 million, hopefully by 26. That is their goal. That will help us start turning the corner in those reforestation efforts moving forward. For the essence of time, I'll heed.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here in Owasso country here in Santa Cruz. Don Hankins with the Indigenous Stewardship Network, and thinking of the significance of being in this location is really today on the drive down through Ramaytush country into Owasso country. I was thinking of, one, the changes that are happening in the landscape. We've heard about the devastation of fires, particularly with the CZU complex. Having grown up on this coast myself, I've seen these changes, and it reflects on me the importance of the work that this task force is doing and the work that all of you in this room are doing and online. The threats that we see today, one of the things that was on my mind on the drive this morning was that this landscape evolved with a very specific type of fire that we have removed, and specifically thinking about this, and Val may share this in his comments at some point. But not too far from here, down on the Pajaro River drainage in 1769, the Sacred Expedition, the Portola Expedition, had traveled up the Pajaro River into a landscape that had been burned and came into an Ohlone village that had been cared for and loved with fire. And as I think about the risks that we experience currently, and we recognize currently because of climate change, our landscapes are changing rapidly, and the thing that's missing largely is the stewardship. And so when I think about that in the context of the Central California coast, one thing that gives me a great amount of hope, and I know we'll hear about it today with different participants on this panel, is the ways that Indigenous peoples are re-engaging within this landscape. From the great work of Val's group with the Amah-Mutsun Land Trust, folks with the Confederated Great Rancheria, and others along this California coast, many of which are not fully recognized. And I want to highlight that because we are in a place where politically it's a very challenging place to be a tribal person. And so as we think about partnerships and the ability to move things forward, we have to sometimes think beyond the boundaries of what we're used to working within. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Don. Sam.
Great. Well, thank you for having us here this morning in this spectacular place. Again, as my colleague Wade described, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research is the state's lead land use agency created in the 1970s. From my profession in land use, I very strongly believe that how we use the land is the through line for some of the challenges that we see, whether it's climate change or fire or how we interface with development and open space, but it's also the tool for resolving those issues. So I just want to briefly sort of outline some of the key, especially 3 key areas that my office is engaged in addressing some of the challenges around and supporting challenges around wildfire. My office develops tools and guidelines to local governments as they decide on their land use policies and how to best integrate available data, information, science into their long-range plans that really respond to wildfire, housing, and safety related to all of the decisions on land use, transportation, as well as environmental issues. Second, we create and develop policies and programmatic alignments across all levels of state agency. For example, working very closely with my colleague Wade, Natural Resources, as well as multiple other agencies to make sure that the state's land use decisions are well aligned and coordinated. We don't always get it right, but because of multiple objectives, in one hand, we want to maximize housing because we have significant needs, but we also have to be cognizant in terms of how smart we need to be to allocate that needed land for housing versus where do we need to protect. So we help coordinate those kinds of policy alignments. We also engage in investment in research, which is really a critical component, as well as funding transformative infrastructure projects that actually help resiliency and adaptation to a number of climate challenges, including wildfire. I just want to briefly share some specific highlights of this work just in the recent past. Last August, OPR released the Wild Land Urban Interface Planning Guide, also known as the WUI Planning Guide, to complement OPR's Fire Hazard Planning Technical Advisory. This is an advisory and a guide for local agencies. This resource highlights how local agencies across California can leverage plans, regulations, and additional tools to reduce risk in wildfire prone areas. And I would encourage especially local jurisdictions and citizens to take a look at what the incredible resource and data on our website. One example is, for example, in the city of Santa Barbara's Wildland Fire Suppression Assessment District. The district is a fantastic case study in this respect and is highlighted in the guide that we developed due to its ability to leverage the existing framework in order to achieve massive successes from that perspective. The district has, most of you know, has provided hundreds of thousands of dollars in annual funding for wildfire risk reduction work, such as vegetation and road clearance. So we have a number of examples, best practice examples that we include for local agencies to actually look at and implement in their area. We also developed in ASPHALT what's called a plan alignment toolkit, which includes wildfire plan alignment guide and a flood after fire plan alignment guide, again, for the same purpose to really inform local decisions. One thing that I'm really excited about, we just kicked off a few months ago the 5th climate change assessment. This is an assessment that the state does every 5 years. Just to give you context, only the International Panel on Climate Change and the US government are the only entities in the world who actually do climate assessment, and California is the 3rd entity. So every climate assessment that was done previously, the 4th assessments, have actually informed what investments and what policies the state should pursue based on the current science. One thing that I'm really excited about on the 5th assessment is, for the first time, we're including tribal perspectives in informing the science for how we manage our land. As we know, people who've been here for thousands and thousands of years and lived in harmony with the land, there's a lot of information and data that would be important to actually integrate that in our assessment. So we've identified about 26 specific topical areas that are missing in terms of the research and the information that we put together a task force in place now, Tribal Advisory Task Force. We're also putting out a request for proposal very soon to get the scientists and the research institutions to join in terms of addressing the 26 specific areas that I mentioned. That assessment, once it's completed, will be, again, key current information around a very fast-changing climate that we need to use and inform ourselves in our policy decisions, as well as at the state level and at the local and local jurisdiction levels. Today, I'm here to listen and hear from you, and also hear how the Office of Planning and Research could coordinate, collaborate, or address some of the issues that you deal with in this area. Thank you again for having us here.
Thank you so much, Sam. Richard, looks like you are trying to turn on your mic. There you go.
There we go. Okay. Thanks, Wade. Good morning, everybody. I'm Richard Barheit. I'm the director of the Pacific Southwest Research Station within the U.S. Forest Service. And we are one of 5 regional research stations across the U.S. Forest Service. In our area, we cover California, Hawaii, and the U.S. affiliated Pacific Islands. One of the major areas of work that I would point out right now that we've been involved in is our work with partners on the regional resource kits. These kits are providing large data sets and decision support capabilities across 10 different pillars of resilience. And we have just completed with partners the regional resource kits for the Central Coast here. And this follows previous work in the Sierra and Southern California, and then the North Coast kits will be provided in September. And we're finding that partners are using these kits to help them understand the conditions of their landscapes right now across these different pillars of resilience, and then also to support strategic planning for projects that can improve forest resilience and reduce wildfire risk. And so I would certainly encourage you, if you haven't had a chance yet already, to go onto the task force website and look at the data sets that are available. And feel free certainly to reach out to us if there's anything that we can help support as you start looking at applying those capabilities in your area. We've been learning quite a bit as we've been developing these data sets with partners, and as Wade mentioned earlier, really each one of these different ecoregions brings its unique set of challenges and opportunities as well. And so we're finding more and more as we go through these, that there really are quite a few different areas that we need to be highlighting within each ecoregion. So hopefully you'll find as you go and apply these capabilities that in your particular area that you'll see data sets that will be helpful to you. Another capability that is on there as well is collaboration that we have been supporting between CNRA and Google.org to develop the Planscape decision support tool. This is a public domain decision support capability for large landscape planning. It's also going to be available soon as part of the regional resource kits as well. So looking forward to continuing to work with all of you on further developing these capabilities across the entire state, and then looking at how we can really sustain those data sets as we move forward, so that we have current information to support the changing conditions that we'll be experiencing. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Richard, for all the work. And those regional toolkits are really important and meant to help local groups and leaders increase the pace and scale of the projects we all want to get done. The last executive committee I'm executive committee member I'm proud to introduce is my colleague, Secretary Yana Garcia, who serves as California's Secretary for Environmental Protection. Governor Newsom recently appointed Secretary Garcia to this role, and she leads our sister agency at the state, the California Environmental Protection Agency, which protects our clean air and clean water and against toxics and pesticides. Welcome, Secretary.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, and thanks for having me. Excited to be here with you all today. Special thanks for all of you for all the work that you're doing each and every day to enhance our resilience capacity. I am a firm believer that our local partnerships get us anywhere that we need to go as a state. And so really looking forward to hearing from you all what is working on the ground at the local level and at the regional level. I have to say, driving here this morning, definitely hit some traffic, but along the 17, just want to recognize my own personal history with Santa Cruz. I'm a banana slug, a proud banana slug. So happy to be back here. Lived in the beach flats, in fact, so drove by my old college home on the way over here looking for parking. I was very worried about parking, actually, knowing this area before coming here. So happy to be back here in Santa Cruz for something like this. And again, looking forward to hearing from you all. You all are probably familiar with some of the work that the Environmental Protection Agency does in this space, but just want to run through a little bit of it for those of you who may not be. Proudly, we have the State Water Resources Control Board within our purview at the agency. That includes the 9 regional boards. We work very closely around fire suppression activities, as well as in post-fire remediation work. Excuse me. We are happily looking at the issuance of general orders now to streamline restoration work. In the aftermath of fires, we're particularly concerned with the impact of various forms of contaminants in our drinking water sources. This is something that, we're all concerned about in the long-term resilience of our communities and rebuilding of our communities in the aftermath of wildfires. So very much looking forward to hearing from you all and working together more on that. Also really hoping that we can talk a little bit about CARB's role. For those of you who are familiar with the scoping plan, first of its kind, economy-wide plan to really help us reach carbon neutrality, and our natural and working lands are key to achieving this. And that means that we're really concerned about wildfire from the standpoint of large-scale emissions and ensuring that we are bringing those emissions down and that we are not only protecting communities, but also protecting the climate from the impact of wildfires. And that we're also at the same time looking at controlled burns and cultural burns, things that we know have been used by California's first people since time immemorial to suppress fires, and ensuring that we're able to do that responsibly throughout the state in order to help our resilience capacity as well. And then finally, the Department of Toxic Substances Control and CalRecycle both have roles to play in the aftermath of wildfire with household hazardous waste removal and debris removal. And I know that that also gets quite complicated and requires a lot of really careful local partnerships. So looking forward to working more with you all on those issue areas as well. I see that I have some colleagues from the Office of Environmental Health Hazards Assessment in the room as well. And want to just nod to the great work that they're doing on the data side in partnership with so many of you and our colleagues at CAL FIRE to understand how we can better map fire-prone areas and how we can do that with the understanding that there are particularly vulnerable communities in at-risk areas for wildfire, so we can know that ahead of time as we're planning for both the fires and also recovery long-term. Thanks so much again for having me. I'm looking forward to hearing from you all for the day today.
Thank you so much, Jana. And thank you, executive committee members. Your role here today is to ensure that our local governments, our federal government, our tribal governments and communities, and our state government are actually all coordinated in this work, and that's so important. The last leader that I'll introduce today to really set the tone for the rest of the day is Chairman Valentin Lopez, who leads the Amamutsin Tribal Band. Chairman Lopez has been an inspirational leader in many areas of environmental stewardship, including wildfire resilience. And Chairman, we're honored that you accepted our invitation here today to both provide a tribal land acknowledgement and any high-level thoughts you have to this group as we begin our work.
Well, thank you very much, Secretary Whitfield. And thank you everyone for attending and welcome, the esteemed panel. It's a pleasure and honor to be sitting here with you today. I'm the chairman of the Amamutsin Tribal Band, and our tribe is comprised of the descendants of the peoples that were taken to missions San Juan Bautista and Santa Cruz. And it's important that we acknowledge the lands that we're on, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes to talk about that. The lands we're on is recognized today as being the Awaswas territory. It's important to understand that the Awaswas are human beings. They spoke the Awaswas language. There were 8 tribes from Aptos to Pescadero to the ridgeline that were part of the Awaswas speaking tribes. One of the oldest archaeological sites in California is within this territory. The site is 13,200 years old. There's probably many sites that are much older than that here today. We're not hunters and gatherers. It's very insulting when Native people are referred to as hunters and gatherers, and that is changing. The Awaswas-speaking people had daily life practices. They had family structures. They had day-to-day rituals, ceremonies, and interactions with other tribes. They did not seek to build empires or exploit the natural resources. They stayed within their territory. They had families, doctors, structured communities, and societies, spiritual leaders, and ongoing trading relations with tribes in all 4 directions. They had politics. They had marriage between communities. They had trading gatherings and other complex relationships. They took care of their environment. They used fire as a tool. They saw all wildlife and all living things as being relatives. They had the same mother and father as we do. Our father is Father Sky, the same as the trees, the same as the wildlife, the same as the water. They have the same mother we do, Mother Earth, who nourishes and takes care of us and provides for us. The same for the plants, the same for the water, the same for the wildlife. Therefore, they're our relatives, and we have a responsibility to take care of them in a loving, caring, patient way. We need to sing to them. We need to listen to them. We need to pray for them. That's the way our people saw it. They did not seek to dominate or destroy other people or resources. Then came the hard times, the Mission and Spanish times, the Mexican period, the California period. At the turn of the century in 1900s, their numbers were reduced by over 96%. Today, there are no survivors of the Awaswas tribe. From those 8 tribes, Aptos to Pescadero to the Santa Cruz Mountain Ridge Lines, no survivors. They all perished. Today, our tribe works with other tribes to ensure the lands of the Awaswas-speaking peoples are stewarded in the traditional way, are taken care of. We work to restore sacredness to the lands and to ensure the Awaswas-speaking people are honored and they are never forgotten. I say this because a lot of times that land acknowledgement, they're just words. But it's important that people know who the people were. And they lived here for those thousands and thousands of years. If you look at it in terms of generations, 900, 1,000 generations, and many more is how they lived here. So that's what I wanted to say. A couple other things I want to talk about from the tribal perspective is the relationship that we have with fire. To us, fire is a sacred gift given to us from Creator. It's a gift that allowed us to have light when it was dark, to be able to cook our foods, to be able to be warm when it was cold. Fire was a very central part of our spiritual practices, our prayers. When we pray, we have a smudge stick and we pray, and the smoke from that smudge stick carries our prayers up to Creator. When we have ceremony, we have a fire in the center of that ceremony. And the dancers, they go around and they collect the prayers from those attending the ceremony, and they give those prayers up to the fire so those prayers can go up to Creator. That's the way our people took care of Mother Earth. That's the way they saw fire. We need to restore all restoration efforts, whether it be the language, working on culture, working on any aspect of restoration. It must include restoring sacredness to the lands. That's a unique feature that tribes bring to addressing our environment and addressing the issues of fire and restoration. We have to restore sacredness first. For that reason, our tribe has a lot of prayer and a lot of ceremony on the lands that we work on. Our traditional tribes, lands of our tribe, extend from Watsonville south to the Alcorn Slough. And then they follow the Palo watershed out to the tops of the Diablo Range. And then it also includes the territories north to Coyote Valley, just south of San Jose, and down to Pinnacles National Park. We work hard, our tribe does, our land trust. In 2012, we developed the Ama Mutsun Land Trust, and the 4 goals of our land trust are to protect and preserve and conserve our sacred sites, our cultural sites, it's sensitive, important landscapes. The second goal is to do research, to learn how to, how to adopt. How to relearn a lot of that knowledge that we lost over those generations of being removed from our lands, to restore that knowledge, but then also to relearn the knowledge of how to take care of the waters, how to take care of the oceans, the coast, the plants, the trees, etc. We work hard with Berkeley, Stanford, UC Santa Cruz. We currently started working with UCLA on coast on the ocean and coastal resources, et cetera. So our tribe works hard in that regard. We have formed relationships with many people. We have an MOU with State Park Service. We have MOUs with the BLM, with National Park Service. We have MOUs with many of the land trust, open space districts, and many other public land holders. We also work with on private property. We're looking to bring back our traditional cultural burning for the improvement and the enhancement of environment. So I welcome you to Santa Cruz, welcome you to Awaswas. The actual tribe that was here was the Uipi tribe. Welcome you to Uipi-Was. Oh.
Chairman, thank you for those powerful words that really center us on the work today. I am proud that I think between our governments and communities, we are making progress. I'll speak for the state government, building tribal partnerships and really understanding that it's indigenous peoples that have stewarded these lands since time immemorial. And as we work to bring resilience on this question of wildfire, we have to learn from our tribal partners. And that, of course, includes significantly expanding cultural burns in partnership and with the leadership of tribes. So thank you for all of your work and being here today to set us with that powerful frame.